With the body modifications completed, Nick attacked the rear axle assembly. And the first thing to do here is to carefully fixture the rear axle assembly on a bench. We welded it right to our welding table. And it's important here to pay attention to the instructions because you have to make sure that everything is level and square and true because you're going to be attaching the provided Detroit Speed brackets to the rear axle housing itself and welding them up. And you want to make sure that this is done right because the last thing you'd want to do is have to cut these off and do it again. That would suck. So read the directions twice, 3 times, and make sure you get this one right. All these brackets need to be welded to the rear axle housing because we're no longer going to be using the leaf spring perches, and instead we're using a coil-over spring and shock combination. Because our rear axle housing already had the ends welded onto it, we couldn't just slide these brackets over the ends and then weld them in place. So Nick took a few minutes to carefully cut all these brand new brackets in half and then position them in the right place and then welded them back together on the housing. And this is how you do it if you have a housing that's already assembled. Sometimes you can order a brand new housing without the ends on it, but in our case, it was a lot easier just to cut these brackets and put them in place and weld them all up. This is another example where you want to be checking your work while you're welding. And that gets tricky because as soon as you weld some of these brackets, the heat can make them want to move or twist just a little bit. So we recommend tacking them all in place and then checking them several times and then going back to do the final welding. One of the requirements of this kit is to make sure the axle-mounted panhard bar mount is at a perfect 90-degree angle with the face of the axle housing. And we accomplish this by, first of all, welding our housing to the table via some steel stands, but then again checking the work along the way, and you can see with the angle finder that this is dead nuts accurate. After all the finish welding was completed, Nick jacked the housing up underneath the car and installed the QUADRALink control arms and to make sure that everything fit nice. This again gets checked a couple of times. We're showing you after it's been finally welded. You want to do this once everything is tacked the first time. Again, I can't stress enough that it's something you want to check and make sure everything's going smoothly along the way. When everything checked out, the guys disassembled the whole rear axle housing and Nathan prepped it for paint. It got a couple of coats of BASF black epoxy primer and then a black urethane top coat. And then the rear axle assembly was assembled for the last time. They assembled the Currie 9+ center section into the housing, put the axles back in, and assembled everything into the car. It's a lot of assembly work, but these are they're like big tinker toys putting these parts back together. One note is that the Detroit Speed QUADRALink arms come factory powder coated, so you don't have to do anything to those. The last part of the process is making all the adjustments. This rear suspension is designed to be almost infinitely adjustable. First of all, it's a coil-over shock rear design, so you can change those coil springs to different rate springs based on the weight of your car. Detroit Speed sends a pair of springs that should be fine for most Camaros, but if you want to make them more aggressive for a track car, you can change those at any time. Those are also a little bit adjustable for rear ride height, so there's that adjustment to make. And then the upper and lower control arms can be adjusted to set the pinion angle, but once you have it all dialed in, you're ready to go enjoy a car that's going to have much better street manners driving around on the road, and it's going to have a very capable track suspension for autocross or road course events.